Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Murphy's Law. I am excited to have Rabbi Jamie Arnold here with me today, Rabbi of Beth, Evergreen, and just entrepreneur, professor, all the things that Rabbi Jamie does. I can't wait to get into, but more than that, major community stakeholder, and not just what you would expect, the Jewish community, but so many communities to include multicultural Pentecostal communities, all the communities, and we're gonna get into what that looks like. What I'm excited about is I just freaked a bunch of you guys out saying a rabbi is a major stakeholder in a Pentecostal community. You got to listen to this to understand how that works. And so, Rabbi, thank you for joining us today.
Murphy, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invitation. Really excited for the conversation.
Absolutely. Well, Rabbi, tell us how you tick. Tell us all about you. Tell us about how you became a rabbi and kind of where you grew up. Start from the beginning.
Oh, wow. Whole story, huh? So I was born in North Carolina. I grew up in Rochester, New York.
Wow.
Parents are, my dad, who recently passed away, was a psychologist, a child psychologist. My mom, a special ed teacher. And I went to college in Ohio. And
where in Ohio?
Kenyon College in Ohio. Yeah.
Oh, I went to Xavier, so I had to check and see just in case.
Right. And spent some time in Israel, lived in Jerusalem for a year.
And is that, I want you to pause there for a second because from experience with my own aunt becoming a rabbi, I know that that's one of your requirements. So is that what you did as in your rabbi journey, or did you do that before you decided to become a rabbi?
Because I didn't have a real intense Jewish education growing up, the rabbinical school said they would welcome me to start there after I spent a year in Israel learning Hebrew. So I went before rabbinical school and also during rabbinical school.
Nice.
At the time when I went to school, a year of study in Israel was required. They no longer have that requirement, actually.
Oh, they don't?
Okay. But yeah. So
why did they take that away? That seems like the most immersive, cool experience. And I know when my aunt went through it, the whole family got to kind of live some of that because we were constantly talking to her and like getting those experiences from her. So why did they take that away?
Yeah. I think they still encourage it, strongly encourage it. I think the requirement had to do with some logistical challenges, both in terms of providing rabbinic programs there in the Reconstructionist movement where I was trained, but also just the rabbinical school I went to had a lot of individuals that were already in families, second career. So the relocating and uprooting their family to go to Israel for a full year. So I think they do 2 summers or something like that. They still have some Israel requirements, but it's not for a full year. Yeah.
Very nice. So, okay, so you graduated college. You went and stayed in Israel for a year. Was it pretty soon after? Or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right after college, I pretty much painted some houses for a year and then made some money, enough money to get there and stay there for a little while.
And did you learn Hebrew in Israel?
I learned it. Yeah, I would say that's the more immersive learning was an easier way for me to learn Hebrew.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then, so I was in rabbinical school for essentially 7 years and then started working for a congregation in Buffalo, New York.
Oh, wow.
Not too far from where I grew up.
Okay.
I was there 6 years. And then in 2005, I came to beautiful Colorado and came to work at congregation Beth, Evergreen.
I love it.
That's where I've been since.
I love it. So, okay, so I'm still going to back you back up to that time in Israel and the time where you got the call of, I want to become a rabbi. I want to lead people spiritually. And I want to do this, in the way that only Rabbi Jamie can do it. When did you decide to do that? Because I say only Rabbi Jamie is this rabbi specifically, and I know a lot of rabbis, believe it or not. And I'll go through a little bit of my own Jewish history here while we're talking to Rabbi Jamie. But Rabbi Jamie is unique in that he is a major stakeholder in the communities in which he resides, but also that those communities touch abroad. So, like, when did you decide that you wanna do this and how you kinda wanted to make your mark?
Yeah, thank you for the question. And I would say I was always interested in, well, in invested in community.
Mm,
That part, and I was also interested in how religion could foster a sense of community.
mm,
And it was really that w- direction rather than the other way around.
mhm,
I remember in high school, and when one of my friends had a religious parent, I
mhm.
don't remember any of my friends being particularly religious, but some of them had religious parents,
Uh-huh.
and I wanted them to take me to church, and I wanted to go to their synagogue and just like learn about religion because I didn't wasn't grew up in a deeply religious family.
Hmm,
My father wasn't raised Jewish. His parents were Episcopalian. He converted to
mm,
Judaism when he wanted to marry my mom. Um, and then my mom had started what's called a chavurah.
mhm,
So we weren't synagogue goers, but she put an ad in the paper for other Jewish families that were interested in informally gathering and learning and raising kids together. And that group, by the time I was in high school, we did a trip to Israel as a group, and then we started studying other religions. And I
mhm.
actually got interested in Buddhism from one of the presentations that was invited to come to talk to the Chabura, to the fellowship.
Wow.
And so by the time I got to college, I was interested in religion, comparative religion, interfaith studies. I spent 6 months in Nepal,
Mhm,
living on a Tibetan Buddhist monastery mostly.
mm,
Um, and studied Christian mysticism, and met a woman who eventually became my wife, who was in the process of converting to Judaism,
oh, wow.
and she was studying with a rabbi to do that, and I joined her in those studies, and that's where I got kind of hooked in the Jewish thing.
Wow.
Um,
Wow.
and yeah, I really didn't have a relationship with a rabbi growing up, so
Mm,
had no sort of vision of doing that as a career. But when I was in my last year of college, I remember talking to my mom. I was sitting in like the guidance counselor's office
yeah.
trying to figure out where to go next. And she
We've all been
said,
there, by the
yeah,
way.
yeah, yeah, I bet. She had worked for her entire career with high school kids transitioning to college and then working, and so she asked me like, well, what do you want to do? Well, I like teaching, I like counseling and
Mhm,
supporting people, and I'm kind of into music too. I want to keep doing music if I can. And she's like, oh, rabbi does all those things. I
hmm,
was like, what's a rabbi? Like, okay, so I explored it. Decided to go to rabbinical school, not because I thought I wanted to be a rabbi,
mhm,
but because I wanted to be immersed in serious Jewish learning and community.
mm,
And that's what I found in rabbinical school. And then um, tried different things. I assumed I might teach in a university and help out with Jewish life. Um, but had 3 kids while I was in rabbinical school.
oh, wow.
And the best paying jobs were working for small congregations that couldn't afford a full time rabbi. I flew out once a month and did a long weekend with them, and just really liked, the leading services, the counseling, the teaching, working with families in sort of pivotal life cycle events,
Sure.
bar mitzvahs, namings, weddings, divorce,
Wow.
deaths. So I just found that work very meaningful.
Wow.
So it wasn't like a aha moment, God is telling me to be a rabbi so
Mhm.
much and still feel like every day I wake up and I have to decide, do I want to be a rabbi today?
Mm. That's interesting, and
Yeah.
you hit on something earlier that I wanna kind of focus on a little bit, and that is in the Jewish community, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I've seen and what I know, this is correct. There's almost 2 facets of people. People that call themselves Jews that are cultural Jews, and people that call themselves Jews that are both cultural and religious.
Hmm.
And some Jewish people would not like you to say that out loud, but we know that the same thing relies in Christianity. Some people that call themselves Christians, but they go to church on Easter,
Right.
and but they say I'm Christian, and you say, "What does that mean to you?" And they're like, "Well, we eat these things and we do these things." But then there's people that practice the faith. Talk about that, and
Yeah.
what does that look like, truly in the Jewish community from your perspective?
Yeah, thank you. It's a difficult piece to understand, especially if you're from outside the Jewish community
Mhm.
looking in, the different ways that people, invest in and hold Jewish identity.
Yeah.
It's not purely religious. One of my lineage of learning is from Mordecai Kaplan and 20th century, talking about Judaism is not a religion, actually.
Mm.
It's better
Mm.
better to think of more accurate to think of Judaism as a civilization,
Ah,
which
okay.
includes a religious element to it. And certainly religion has been a prominent sort of glue,
Mhm.
cohesive force in Jewish community since, for the last 2,000 years until 1948, holding a community together without its own land, without its own really actively spoken language, and,
Mhm.
without its own sort of self-governance structure, right? Self-determined its own government. So it needed religion to sort of hold that community together. I'd say there's four different aspects of Jewish identity.
Mhm.
So you just talked about culture.
Mhm.
It can appear like bagels and lox, and
Ooh, my
you
favorite.
feel
Oh, I just love it. Absolutely.
it could be a culinary thing associated with your Ashkenazi
Gefilte
or Sephardi
fish.
gefilte fish. Yeah, exactly. Um, yeah, and there's a sort of a way Jews speak, right? Like Seinfeld and Woody,
Oh, yeah.
like you get different Yiddishisms and things like that that are create a sense of cultural or ethnic even
Mhm.
identity. Um, there's a religious, spiritual identity of sort of a way of thinking about and
Mm.
engaging and connecting with God and one another, and the ritual practices, the Sabbaths and the holidays and things like that. You might call that the spiritual religious
Mhm.
side. There's also, especially since Zionism in 1948, a national identity. I mean, Israelis
Mhm.
who are Jewish might say, I'm Israeli, not Jewish, but it's their Jewish identities invested in their
Mhm.
national allegiance. And even for many American Jews that weren't connected with synagogue life, their sense of pride in the state of Israel and what it could accomplish, and technologically and in terms of self defense, um, became a part of Jewish identity.
Absolutely.
Um, uh, yeah, and then community. It's like, who are your friends? Your friends are Jewish, or you sort of feel that
Yeah.
Jewish cohesion and community. So, individual, spiritual, cultural, ethnic, religious, and national. I think those are all different dimensions of Jewish
Mhm.
identity that most Jews have all four in some percentage, but
Mhm.
those ingredients. But yeah, you'll find a big variety and differences in the way people identify Jewishly.
Yeah. Wow. It's fascinating, and I think this is the first time I've ever heard someone, quantify it in a way that I understood that it's a civilization, because that brings a civilization brings all the things that you talked about together without having to put it in a box, right? And I really like that, so I'm gonna use that and steal that.
Well,
Um
I'll add a dimension to that that's been impactful for me in terms of thinking about broader community
Mhm.
engagement. That I think about, and Mordecai Kaplan framed one of the challenges of 20th century life as Jewish life, in particular, is living in two civilizations.
Mm.
So, how do you straddle Jewish civilization, especially as American Jews,
Mhm.
um, living in Jewish civilization and being part of Jewish community, and being fully and full-throatedly an American, right,
Yeah.
and engaged in American life and life with our neighbors, and so the um, the model is that we can bring out the best in one another, right? That the two civilizations can cross-fertilize and
Mhm.
enhance one another, and that American ideals and egalitarianism and democracy and equality, that these values can infuse Jewish life and enrich Jewish civilization, and then Jewish traditions can also add something like we have beautiful rituals around death and mourning,
Mhm.
and ritual practice that is centered around family. Like
Yeah.
those are things that could benefit Americans, whether they're Jewish or not.
Yeah.
So that cross-fertilization, I think, has been a significant sort of platform for me understanding my role as a leader.
It's a good segue to my own experience, in that, as you know, I grew up. I would call myself a Pentecostal Jewish kid,
Yeah, nice.
and what's cool about that is since I was essentially born, I grew up in the Pentecostal church being my primary faith-based mechanism of community. However, there was a caveat to that in that my aunt early in my life, I think actually all my life, was Jewish. And we would spend almost every Friday, if not every other Friday, with her going to the synagogue. And I grew up Jewish. And it was a large part of my life, and to this day is a large part of my family's heritage. And the reason I call it a part of our heritage is because there's not a family get together that goes by, or a time that we get together where we're not singing in Hebrew, we're not praying in Hebrew, we're not celebrating the Sabbath, we do exactly what Jewish families do. Why? Because number one, that's what we've always done, and that's was a huge integral part of our lifestyle and adopting how my aunt chose to do faith. But more than that, in my family willingly kind of taking on my aunt's ability to become a rabbi, frankly, we all saw the really cool and wonderful experience that the Jewish community allowed us to be a part of,
Mm,
frankly.
mm.
And uh, I think it's fascinating because a lot of people, when they think about Jewish people, they don't think about Black Jews or, Asian Jews. And there are, by the way, all different types of Jewish people. um, Talk about that a little bit, Rabbi.
Yeah.
I think when I shock a lot of even Jewish people when someone says can we say the prayer, and I start speaking in Hebrew, they're like, oh my God,
Yeah.
you know. Talk about what
It's a
that's
cool
like
party trick
to.
you got there, Murphy.
It is a
Yeah.
cool party trick.
Yeah.
I did it recently this last year. We were invited to a Shabbat dinner,
Yeah.
and it was a culturally practicing Jew. They don't really go to the synagogue, and one of the participants said, "I wish we could actually read this Hebrew and speak it." I said, "Oh, I'll do it for you." And Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. They were like, "What in the world is happening?" And so, talk about kind of
Yeah.
what that looks like as the Jewish faith has progressed and allowed others in, um, like myself and like my aunt and all the folks that don't fit the mold of like having the heritage piece.
Yeah.
That's the beautiful part about it, because I truly believe it's part of who I am,
Yeah.
and it's actually molded me to who I am today. Talk about how that's kind of
Yeah.
ingrained.
The impression of Jews in America in particular, since historically, so much of the immigration to the United States of the Jewish community was from Eastern Europe. So
Mm,
they appear Caucasian, white, Eastern European heritage. But in Israel, the majority of Jewish Israelis are Mizrahi or Sephardi. They're people of
mhm,
color,
mhm.
right,
That's
from
right.
other parts of the Middle East. And there are Jews of every color and every nation in the
That's right.
world.
That's
That's
right.
part of the dispersion diaspora of
Mhm.
a lot of years of that. So there's a skewed image of what a Jew is
In America.
in
Yeah.
America. It might also have to do with like a skewed image of what Jesus looks like.
Mm.
Jesus the Jew,
That's
that
a
we don't need to get
that's
into.
it's
But
true. That's that's
you
that's a
know,
whole different
a
podcast,
whole
but yeah.
nother. Yeah, and I
That's so
think
true.
there's the ethnic diversity, sort of biological diversity of the Jewish community, is also within Judaism a celebration of diversity intellectually.
Mm,
Right? There's a passage from the Talmud. These are the words of the living God. Right? That there's a celebration of different perspectives, of multiple points of view. The core sort of text that encapsulates the transition from the Bible to modern or rabbinic Jewish practice is called the Talmud, and it rarely gives you one answer to every question.
Mm,
Right? There's always multiple answers to the same questions.
mm.
And that's true about interpretation of scripture.
That's right.
So I think there's a bias within Judaism towards diversity
Mhm.
rather than um, homogeneity,
Mm,
right? We don't want everyone to look or sound or
mhm,
believe the same way.
mhm,
We are looking for a unity of practice in the sense of, moral practice and how we treat one another, right? There should be a standard of that, and we should strive towards an ideal that looks relatively similar, but in terms of, when I was living in Israel, I was living on an Orthodox kibbutz,
mhm,
and I met with one of the leaders of the services. So he wasn't a rabbi, but he was functioning in the same way as a rabbi, and asked me, what my background was, and I told him, well, I'm a Reconstructionist. That's kind of a liberal or progressive approach to Jewish life.
mhm,
And he said, it doesn't matter what you believe as long as we all practice.
mm,
And that's really drawn from a pretty strong emphasis within Jewish tradition. So, um, yeah, I would say both just because of the diversity of the Jewish community, even though it's a very small
mhm,
community, like, less than 2% or something of Americans
hmm.
are Jewish, and
Wow.
world population, it's less than 1%.
Wow.
Um, uh, that, uh, even within that small number, right? There are 15 million Jews in the world or something like that.
Mm,
Within that small number, there's a great deal of diversity,
yeah.
and not just of, like appearance and physicality,
Mhm.
ethnicity, cultural diversity, but certainly intellectual and belief system too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I think that's a really good segue to some of the stuff I've seen you do. And now I have never been to or seen the shelters that you've started, or, I know you've participated in, I think, food pantries and stuff like that. Talk about some of your giving work and your,
Mm,
some of those things that you've done for the community. But I'd also like you to touch on some of your partnerships
mm,
that you've done, and especially with my own mom, where you have gotten together. I think it's 8, 9 years now,
something like that. Yeah.
something crazy like that, where we bring the Christian and Pentecostal community together, Black church. Yeah, and I specifically say, y'all, on purpose, Black church, because you can go to a Baptist church or you know, a different type of church, but Black culture in church is its own culture all by itself. So I call that out,
Sure.
calling out Black church and Pentecostal Black church, combining that with a Jewish community. My God, like that all by itself has been a fun
Our God.
our God, yes,
Yeah.
our God. It's been a fun
Yeah.
experiment,
Beautiful.
and I call it an experiment in the same way that we call the American democracy an experiment.
Mm,
Something that we continuously tweak, work on, uh, intentionally understand that unless you're intentional about it, um, you're not going to have it forever if you're not intentional about the execution. I think about the same way about democracy.
yeah.
And so uh talk about that.
Yeah.
How did that even start? Start with some of the other things you've done with um the pantries and all those things, but then go into that partnership.
Nice. Well, first of all, I love your mom and your aunt, and I would say that partnership was one of the first. I'm interested in music, and I've
Mhm.
always been a lover of gospel music. Ray Charles got me hooked, and
Nice.
um, and and we started creating these music services, and there's some there was a gospel thing, like Jewish gospel
Oh, nice.
thing
I've never heard
that
that term. Jospel.
I,
I like it.
but it was it felt a little forced in some ways, and I really like the idea of partnering with a community that does gospel music
Mhm.
on a regular basis
So you were
and
singing
building that.
gospel.
We
You
were
just didn't have anybody that knew gospel in the choir
I
with you,
think
or
when
how
we
what is
wanted to
that?
put together a choir, we wanted a real gospel choir,
Nice.
sound,
I love
and
it.
I don't know how to do that. Um, so that, and then your aunt had once served Congregation Beth Evergreen for a
Mhm.
short time and did
Oh, wow.
services there. So we had our music director knew Rabbi Alyssa and contacted her to see if she knew. And oh, do I know somebody? My sister Val is the
Nice.
person. So that's how that initial contact
I
happened.
love it.
Um,
And for
and yeah,
those
that's
really quickly, Rabbi, for those who don't know, my aunt, who I've referenced multiple times, who Rabbi Jamie has referenced, her name is Rabbi Alyssa Stanton. She's the first African American woman rabbi in the world, who has served in many capacities all over the place. And one day you'll probably get to meet her. But just so you all are aware, that's how I came into the Jewish faith, and participated, in the Jewish faith for my whole life. So I just wanted to give that
yeah.
context.
Yeah, and I know you talk about security and
Yeah.
community security a lot here, and maybe your listeners are familiar with the challenges that the Jewish community has faced in terms of security. I mean, the number of synagogue, Beth Evergreen has been on lockdown for bomb threats and
Mm.
and active threats in the community, several times a year
Mm.
especially over the last 3 years. And so, like in Europe, which has been the case in Europe for more than a decade, most synagogues require armed security at
Mm.
every event,
Mm.
and that we're not allowed to leave the doors open. And we have, thankfully, we've gotten federal grants and stuff to help pay for tens of thousands of dollars a year that we invest in security. Um, I have not been one to promote the hardening that those forms of security, especially for the idea we're trying to create spiritual community and
Mhm.
build a sense of trust and openness,
Mm.
right? We want an open tent, and it's
Mhm.
to have a doorbell and an armed security guard at the door. It's not the image that I would love to see.
Absolutely.
My approach to security has been building alliances with our neighbors,
Yeah.
and that I can credit with my neighbor when I moved into a row house in Philadelphia
Mhm.
in 1992 or 93. And I asked my neighbor, I said, should we put new locks on the doors?
Mm.
And he said to me, we look out for each other in this neighborhood.
Mm.
And we didn't lock our door the entire time we lived there, not
Wow.
once. Just,
Wow.
and
Because of community.
because of community,
Mhm.
because of neighbors looking out for each other.
That's right.
Um, and you got to get to know your neighbors if
Mhm.
you want that kind of support and community support. So that's been my approach. So, when I started at Beth Evergreen, one of the first things I did was to revive an interfaith. It's not really interfaith. I'm the only non-Christian, but gather the Christian pastors, the
Yeah.
pastors of the churches in the area, meet
Mhm.
once a month, do sort of, we call the clergy interfaith clergy group in
Nice.
Evergreen, um, and we'd put down things like a multi-faith Thanksgiving service every year for a long
Oh,
time.
very nice.
More recently, we've been doing this effort, which your mom has helped
Mhm.
produce the music for, of a National Day of Atonement,
Oh,
an
yes.
American Day of Atonement.
Mhm.
In Jewish tradition, of course, the 10th day of the Jewish New Year is Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, where we
Mhm.
collectively seek forgiveness and take responsibility for our shortcomings over the past year.
Mhm.
It's a whole day of fasting and prayer. America used to have full days of national fasting
Mm.
and remorse in the wake of the Civil War. Abraham
Mhm.
Lincoln did one, right? And in the wake of World War I, we had one.
Mm.
They've sort of dropped out of the American civic life, right? Even
Mm.
Memorial Day has turned into like mattress and car sales,
Mm.
yeah, in the broader culture. And So this American Day of Atonement idea was on the 10th day of the
Mm.
secular New Year, January 10th, every
Mhm.
year. We would come together and mourn particularly sort of, anti-Black racism and
Yeah.
the suffering that minorities have had to endure in this country.
Mhm.
These transgressions of our collective past as Americans,
Mhm.
I believe we need to talk about them and learn from them, and they don't have to be a source of shame.
No.
They but
They are
learning
history.
they are the real history,
Mhm.
and we can take great pride in learning from and evolving
Yeah.
from that history. Um,
Rabbi,
so
can we stay there for a second?
yeah, you're the boss. You
You
tell us.
you hit on something to me that there's a thread I wanna pull. When did Memorial Day
Hmm,
or a day like that where we're supposed to be mourning and or remembering the fallen, the lost, the killed, the everything that we've done that have sacrificed, that have bled, have all those folks that have given up their lives for our country, for our communities. When did that become about mattress sales?
mm.
And I feel guilty. You know why? I just bought a mattress on Memorial Day, which is
Touchy.
hilarious. It got me a sleep number.
But-
But it's interesting because I can relate to that.
Hmm,
I don't know. While my company put out, we, appreciate all those who have served, all those who
yeah.
gave their lives, and all those things. I did not have a conversation with my kids
Mm,
about what this day is about. I was just happy that we had a day off.
yeah.
And I think partly is because of the speed in which Americans go at right now. We look forward to a break,
Yeah.
um, but we're not intentional about the Sabbath. And I'm wondering if it comes back to that that fundamental principle of if we're not taking a Sabbath consistently,
Yeah.
then we don't utilize the days where we're supposed to be doing the morning and we're supposed to be doing all the other things seriously.
Yeah.
Talk about from your perspective, when did we turn into this hot mess?
Yeah, well, part of the beauty, right, of living in America is its cultural diversity. I think we also need some anchors in our American identity, and in I think that those anchors have slimmed and been basically about economic prosperity.
Mm,
And America has been incredibly successful economically,
yeah,
um, and and that's become our point of pride. Um, and so there's a shift towards those, uh, right? The
absolutely.
commercialism and the capitalism and the financial, system, as this sort of uh, the axis mundi, the sort of center point that around which our identity as Americans can unite, because there's so much difference in our culinary practices, and our when we have a Sabbath and our
Mhm,
holidays, and there's so many different religions. So,
mhm,
what do we have in common? Um, I'm a big believer in civic religion, right? Of like having, the something like the Pledge of Allegiance or singing the national anthem, right? That
it's
these
huge.
ritual components, doing Thanksgiving, I think, does it well.
Mhm,
But we haven't created the rituals for Memorial Day, maybe even Labor Day, to help, foster that sense of American identity that's not about economic prosperity,
yeah,
but about social cohesion and shared values
yeah,
beyond, economic prosperity and freedom, and that's where I think the churches, the synagogues, the mosques, the can I'm I don't want to blur the separation between church and state here. I'm not right. We shouldn't have any one religion doing that, but we can help remind us and our neighbors that even though we go to different places of worship on Saturday, Sunday, or Friday,
mhm,
we share some values, And many of those values overlap with the values of the founding fathers and mothers of American culture.
Yeah. It's interesting you mentioned separation of church and state. I've done some significant research on that. And um, when I look at that term, separation of church and state, it was never that the church couldn't participate in the things that government were putting on. That was never the case. Matter of fact, I believe the foundational principles of American society today is when our faith based organizations can absolutely participate in everything about our lives, whether it's government induced or it's just our everyday lives. What separation of church and state was meant for was that the government can never mandate nor intercede in how we practice faith.
Yeah.
And that we have lost because now they're pushing the opposite agenda
Hmm.
of that we can't participate in faith-based things in government practices. That's just not real. And if you look at the Constitution, you look at all the other letters and doctrines that have been there, it was never for that purpose. And so I am putting everybody on notice. That is not what America's about.
Yeah.
Let us practice our faith loud and proud. Let us be um, uh, conscious of how we practice faith with each other and accept others' faiths and with inclusion and curiosity. But let us not degrade the fact that faith is the secret sauce of this country.
Hmm.
Because if we don't have faith, we have nothing.
Hmm. Yeah, that First Amendment has two roles for the government relative to religion. One is to protect the free expression of religion.
That's right.
Right? That's the first role of government. The second is to contain its own impulse to promote any one religion.
That's right.
So it's not allowed to promote or endorse any one religion, but it is required to protect our right for free expression of religion. Those two components, right? They're complementary, but they're right, two sides of the same coin. You had asked, coming back to the earlier question around
Yes.
the, when gathering together this interfaith group in Evergreen. So in 2007 and 2008, we had a pretty significant housing, and financial recession, right? And we saw the Evergreen Christian Outreach as sort of the social service organization up in Evergreen. We're in Jefferson County, but up in the mountains, and so we don't really get a whole lot of services. They noticed that there was twice as many people, 3 times as many people who are unhoused or underhoused and requiring the support. So we formed an affordable housing advocacy group of the clergy, a subgroup of this interfaith clergy group, and started looking and trying to promote transitional housing, workforce housing, things like that in Evergreen. And then decided that the most urgent need was to provide winter shelter for our neighbors who were unhoused. And so we created a shelter program. Interfaith Hospitality Network is a nationwide organization. We use sort of that model of buying cots and church. 1 week it would be at the synagogue, hosting overnight, guests overnight, and the next week it would be another church, and the next week another church. And we had 4 or 5 churches that were hosts, and it just rotated over the course of the winter in the particular, because people can live in their tents or in their cars more comfortably in the summer, but in the winter it was a matter of public health.
Wow.
And then during COVID, that program, for obvious reasons, well, actually what we did was to need to have it be in one site. And so that's how it exists today. But now, we have a pretty successful shelter. It's the only shelter in Jefferson County that was open during COVID.
Wow.
That's an outgrowth of that partnership with the religion, even though it's not a specifically religious program. It's just a shelter anyone can participate in who's in need.
Which
Yeah.
you just highlighted something I want every city manager,
Uh,
every county manager, and everyone that runs government to know, speaking from a guy who used to run government. We need to stop trying to do everything in government.
mm,
Government should not, indeed, be the catch all. We have a certain amount of services that we should provide. We have certain tax base that we should be doing. We should absolutely be partnering with and utilizing and looking to the leaders of our community to do things like shelters, to
mm,
do things like, food pantries and all the other types of services that we do. And the reason I say that is because there's so many more people that can do it in the community better than government can do it.
mm.
Government people, and I'm talking about myself back in the day, we like bureaucracy. We like to put rules around rules and then have rules for those rules. And oftentimes in entrepreneurship, which I also can speak to, you just can't get things done that way. You got to have somebody that's scrappy that just says, I want to get food in those mouths. I want to get a cot for them to lay in. And there's no bureaucracy to go around that. There's just an outcome.
Mhm.
And so I wanted to say that because I think we have missed the mark in really mobilizing our community in today's world. You hit it earlier. You said services just don't come to us in the mountains like they do everywhere else.
Yeah.
We have to remember that there's so many other people that can mobilize. Oftentimes, it's a matter of funding.
Yeah. Well, the funding certainly helps, and that's
Hmm.
coming from, the county and the state primarily,
Absolutely.
and but yeah, having a sort of a grassroots organization that just is rising up to notice and meet the needs of the community. I think, that's what they say: act locally, right? Think globally, act locally.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it is a much more effective way. And when we started that, we could turn to other groups,
Mm.
that were doing stuff in Denver and Aurora, and that came up and advised us on how to proceed. And yeah, so that's another potential role for government is
Mm.
to interface and to network
Bring people
folks who
together.
are doing the same thing. So that
Hmm.
yeah, to be our matchmaker to
I love that.
provide. Yeah.
I love that. Rabbi, as we close, I kind of cut you off earlier to talk about other things, but I really want you to hit on this partnership between you and a Pentecostal church.
Yeah.
Talk about that. Talk about what we've done in the last, decade and just why it's successful and where you see it going.
Yeah. Oh man. So there's two. So we have framed it as in terms of a partnership with Zion Temple Church and
Hmm.
Beth Evergreen, where at least once a year we get together and we do what I call a pulpit swap,
Hmm.
right? So the pastor, or in this case the bishop,
Hmm.
speaks at the Friday night service at Beth Evergreen,
Yep.
and then I would speak as the rabbi from Beth Evergreen at the Sunday service at the church.
Hmm.
And the harder work, which your mom does
Yeah.
for us, is is creating a gospel choir that is a mix of members of both congregations,
Hmm.
and bringing those communities together and fostering those friendships, and bringing having music
Hmm.
be the glue, and that's something we can all share. And sometimes we have to tweak the words a little bit to reflect the theology. We can both, in God language that we can that both can sing with a full heart and
Hmm.
a full throated love.
Hmm.
But yeah, it has been a beautiful thing that our community is really loves and looks forward to. And and when I share with other congregations, Jewish congregations, or across the North America, they're like, "Wow, that's a great idea!" I want to know and envious of that
Yeah.
partnership and that model. Um, and I think the way I'd like to expand it, things like adding, and we've done this a couple times, but adding a meal to it, and
Hmm.
really having opportunities for beyond, because we spend so much time rehearsing and
Yeah.
prepping for it, just to talk to each other and get to
Yeah.
know each other better, and have those friendships, extend outside the synagogue or the church walls.
Absolutely.
But yeah, but it really, meant a lot. Like, and after, there's a attack on a synagogue in Minneapolis, or after October 7th, for Bishop Martin and your mom to reach out to our community, and um, uh, and for us to feel, um, you know, at the ready to stand by your community and your church, should there be some threat or something to celebrate that,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Well, it's interesting in an anecdote about that. I was just talking to someone that I grew up with in Zion Temple the other day, and they had been going through a hardship, and they said, "Oh, it's been so nice. Our Jewish community folks at Evergreen have been walking through this with me, and they're bringing things by the house and all." And I said, "Now look at that.
Yeah.
You couldn't make this up. Someone would have never would have never had, otherwise Jewish people to come alongside them and really, be a sister in the Lord, in God with them, to stand with them through hard times and just in life, do life together. That's what this is all about. And I think if we can take a seed of that and just say, put all of the church services and music and all those things aside, some of the most impactful things to me have been the meals
Yeah.
and all those things. Now, I had the fortune of growing up that way. And so this is kind of like everyday practice for me. But for those who want to participate, I encourage you, you don't have to be Pentecostal or Jewish to join our choir or to be a part of this collaboration. And my mother, Val Robinson, who is the kind of the cultivator of this thing, she calls it a collaboration. You can just come and join us and experience this cultural phenomenon of understanding that God has no limits, and that God is the creator and the manifester of all things, and more things that he can manifest relationship, and safety and all the things that come with relationship. And I think that what's cool about this is that we can continue to do life together. And I invite you, go on the website, the Beth Evergreen website or the Zion Temple website, and you'll find the things about the collaboration, because I invite you to experience this. And if you don't even experience this one, find a local faith-based thing that you're curious about and research it. Go and experience it. One of the things I did in college was much like you, Rabbi. I went to a Quaker meeting. I went to a Buddhist meeting. I mean, I went to a Catholic school for college. And so I went to many Catholic services, and I felt God in every one of them. It was very interesting for me. Now, you'll understand the intricacies and the uniqueness of each religion, and you can take from them what you want. But what is very consistent was that there's a people who love God or love, the creator. And that you can't take away. And if we can kind of manifest relationship around that, I think we can do remarkable things. All right, Rabbi, before we go, I have something I want to give you. It's a Murphy's Law mug. I'm sorry we didn't have your coffee in there this time, but
Oh, look at
this
that.
is something to take with you to remember your time here with me at Murphy's Law.
Beautiful. Thank you, Murphy.
Cool.
All
Thank you,
right.
sir.
Cool.
Appreciate you being here.
Pleasure.